The quiet neighbor. Nobody in the building really knew the old man from apartment 407. He had lived there for almost 15 years, yet most people only knew him as the quiet guy on the fourth floor. He rarely spoke, never attended tenant meetings, and always kept his curtains closed. Every morning at exactly 7:15 a.m., he would walk down the hallway wearing the same gray coat and old brown hat. He'd check his mailbox, buy a newspaper from the corner stand,
Did you see that?
and disappear back into his apartment before anyone could
Every
start
morning.
a conversation. Some people thought he was rude. Others thought he was lonely. But 23-year-old Ethan wasn't so sure. Ethan had recently moved into apartment 405 after starting his first real job in Chicago. The building was old, noisy, and filled with strange neighbors, but apartment 407 stood out the most, especially at night. Around midnight, Ethan often heard strange
Hello?
sounds coming
Is
from the
anyone
old man's
there?
apartment. Heavy footsteps, furniture moving, sometimes even soft crying. One night, Ethan passed by the apartment while taking out the trash. As he walked past the door, he heard something that made him stop cold. A little girl's voice. "Please don't leave me alone." Ethan froze. He stared at the door for several seconds. The old man lived alone. At least, everyone thought he did. The next morning, Ethan casually asked the landlord about apartment 407. The landlord immediately looked uncomfortable. "You stay away from that apartment," he muttered. "Why?" Ethan asked. The landlord hesitated before answering. 10 years ago, the old man had a daughter. She disappeared. Ethan's stomach tightened. Disappeared how? No one knows. Police investigated for months, never found her. That night, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about the voice he heard. And at exactly midnight, the crying started again. But this time, it was louder. And then came 3 slow knocks from inside apartment 407. Knock, knock, knock. Ethan stared at his wall in silence, because the sound didn't feel normal anymore. It felt like someone inside that apartment was trying to get out. But Ethan was about to discover something far more terrifying than a missing girl, because the secret inside apartment 407 had been hidden for over a decade. The next few days, Ethan became obsessed with apartment 407. At work, he couldn't focus. At night, he barely slept. Every evening, strange noises echoed through the hallway. Sometimes it sounded like whispering. Other times, it sounded like furniture being dragged across the floor. But the weirdest part? No one else in the building reacted. It was almost like they had trained themselves to ignore it. One rainy Thursday night, Ethan finally decided to investigate. At around 12:30 a.m., he quietly stepped into the hallway. The lights above flickered weakly as he approached apartment 407. The hallway smelled old and damp. Then he heard it again, the little girl's voice. "Dad, please." Ethan's heart pounded. Slowly, he leaned closer to the door, and suddenly, the voice stopped. Complete silence. Then came the sound of footsteps moving toward the door from inside. Ethan backed away quickly. The door handle slowly turned. Creak. The door opened just a few inches. The old man stood there in darkness, staring directly at him. His eyes looked tired, almost empty. "You shouldn't be here," the old man whispered. Ethan tried to speak. I heard someone inside." The old man's face changed instantly. Not anger, fear. "There's nobody here," he said quietly. Then he shut the door, hard. Ethan returned to his apartment shaken, but something didn't feel right. About an hour later, he noticed something unusual from his bedroom window. Apartment 407's curtains were slightly open. And inside the dark room, he saw a small figure standing near the window. A child. The figure disappeared seconds later, Ethan grabbed his phone and considered calling the police. But before he could dial, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered carefully. A weak voice whispered, "If you want the truth, check the basement storage room." Then the call ended.
Ethan stared at his phone in shock, because only tenants had access to the basement, and nobody should have known he was watching apartment 407. What Ethan found in the basement would uncover a hidden secret the entire building had unknowingly lived beside for years. At 2 a.m., Ethan stood outside the basement door holding a flashlight. Every instinct told him to walk away, but curiosity pushed him forward. The basement smelled like rust and mold. Old pipes lined the ceiling while water dripped slowly into puddles across the concrete floor. Storage units covered the walls. Most had locks. One didn't. Storage Unit 407. Ethan swallowed nervously and pushed the door open. Inside, the room was filled with dusty boxes, broken furniture, and old newspapers stacked to the ceiling. Then his flashlight landed on something strange. Children's toys. A pink teddy bear, coloring books, tiny shoes. His breathing slowed. Why would the old man keep children's belongings hidden in a basement storage room for 10 years? Then Ethan noticed a small wooden box sitting in the corner. Inside were dozens of photographs. Most showed the old man smiling beside a little girl with blonde hair. On the back of one photo were the words, "My Lily, Summer 2014. Ethan kept searching. And then he found the newspaper clipping. Missing child, 8-year-old Lily Carter. The article explained that Lily disappeared one night without any evidence. Police suspected kidnapping, but no suspect was ever identified. Ethan's chest tightened. Suddenly, footsteps echoed behind him. He turned quickly. The old man stood at the storage room entrance. But this time, he didn't look angry. He looked broken. "She loved those toys," he whispered. Ethan carefully lowered the flashlight. What happened to her? The old man stared at the floor for several seconds. Then tears filled his eyes. She died. Ethan froze. The old man continued quietly. She had cancer. Terminal cancer. Everything suddenly felt different. The old man explained that Lily spent her final months inside apartment 407. After she passed away, he couldn't let go of her belongings. He kept everything exactly the same. The toys, the room, even the recordings of her voice. Ethan's stomach dropped. "The voice," he whispered. The old man nodded sadly. "I play her recordings every night because I'm afraid I'll forget how she sounded." Silence filled the basement. For the first time, Ethan realized the building's mystery wasn't about danger. It was about grief. But then the old man revealed one final detail. The police never knew she died. Ethan looked up in confusion, and what the old man said next changed everything. Because Lily's death wasn't the real secret hidden inside apartment 407. The truth was far darker than Ethan imagined. The old man sat slowly on an old chair in the basement storage room. His hands trembled as he stared at Lily's photographs. "She died at home," he whispered. Ethan listened carefully. The old man explained that Lily's cancer had become worse very quickly. Doctors told him she only had a few weeks left to live. But Lily was terrified of hospitals. So he made a choice. He brought her home.
She wanted to see the stars from her bedroom window one last time, he said softly. For weeks, he stayed beside her day and night, reading stories, playing music, pretending everything would somehow be okay. Then one cold November night, she stopped breathing. The old man broke down crying. Ethan stood frozen in silence. But why hide her death? Ethan finally asked. The old man wiped his eyes slowly. Because I was afraid. After Lily died, panic took over him. He feared people would blame him for refusing hospital treatment during her final days. Instead of calling authorities immediately, he kept her death secret for nearly 2 days. By the time he reported her missing, the situation spiraled out of control. Police launched investigations.
News channels spread stories, and the old man became trapped inside a lie he no longer knew how to escape. I never hurt her, he whispered desperately. I just couldn't accept losing her. Ethan could see the guilt destroying him, even after all these years. Every night, the recordings played because the old man couldn't bear the silence. Every toy remained untouched because moving them felt like losing Lily all over again. Then the old man looked directly at Ethan. You are the first person who ever asked me what really happened. Ethan realized something heartbreaking. For 10 years, everyone in the building treated the old man like a monster, but nobody ever tried to understand him. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from upstairs. Police officers entered the basement. The landlord stood behind them, his face pale. Apparently, another tenant had reported suspicious activity after seeing Ethan enter the basement late at night. The officers questioned both men carefully. And for the first time in over a decade, the old man finally told the complete truth. But what happened after the confession shocked the entire apartment building, because nobody expected the old man's final decision.
The police investigation lasted several weeks. Old medical records confirmed Lily had terminal cancer. Doctors verified the treatments. And eventually, authorities concluded there was no murder, no kidnapping, no hidden crime. Just a grieving father destroyed by loss and fear. The story spread quietly through the building, and suddenly, people began looking at the old man differently. Neighbors who once avoided him now greeted him politely. Some even brought him food. But years of loneliness had already changed him deeply. One evening, Ethan visited apartment 407 for the first time. Inside, the apartment looked frozen in time. Lily's drawing still hung on the walls. Her tiny shoes sat beside the couch, and her bedroom remained untouched. The old man smiled weakly. She loved drawing stars, he said. Ethan sat with him for hours, listening to stories about Lily. For the first time in years, the old man genuinely looked peaceful. Then, before Ethan left, the old man handed him a small cassette tape. If I'm gone someday, he said softly, throw this away for me. Ethan nodded.
A week later, apartment 407 stayed unusually quiet. No footsteps, no recordings, no crying. The landlord finally unlocked the apartment door. The old man had passed away peacefully in his chair beside Lily's room. In his hand was a photograph of her smiling at the camera. The building held a small memorial service, and surprisingly, almost every tenant attended. Afterward, Ethan walked alone to the apartment one final time. He stared at the cassette tape for several seconds before placing it gently into the trash. Then he looked toward Lily's bedroom window. For the first time since moving there, a
apartment 407 felt peaceful, like two lost souls had finally found each other again. Life lesson for this story? Sometimes people hide pain in ways the world cannot see. Not every quiet person is dangerous. Not every strange behavior comes from evil. Sometimes it comes from grief, loneliness, and heartbreak. Before judging someone, try understanding their story first. Because kindness and compassion can reveal truths that fear never will.